It was All Hallows Eve 25 years ago, when the weather turned cold and it started to snow. And if you don't believe that, not one iota, just remember this tale took place in Minnesota. The temperature dropped as the cold caught me in it by 40 degrees in about 20 minutes. Ice crystals cut into me, blown by the wind till they stung and they froze every inch of my skin. My steps became strained, but I pressed on quite glumly, my limbs growing numb and my gait became clumsy. Yet I struggled to make it to some shelter warm before death overtook me along with the storm. And despite all my effort and determination, an end soon came to my attempted migration. So exhausted a finger I barely could lift, I took one last step, then collapsed in a drift. And soon I thought finally I'll see her again, I'll find her in heaven, we'll reunite then. For my life had been plagued for dozens of years by regret and survivor's remorse and tears, or the loss of my one true love so long ago, to whom I'd soon be going, thanks to the snow, that buried and froze me and ushered in death, as my lips cracked around what would be my last breath. But then just as I thought I was ready to die, a stranger mysteriously came wandering by. He was ragged and rugged, his beard full of frost, but remarkably didn't seem frozen or lost. His clothing was tattered, his shoes they were worn. Of poverty I'd say this stranger was born. I knew not from where this destitute man had come, but I knew in an instant he must be a bum. He sat down next to me and we started to chat, and I stayed awake with him, just chewing the fat, and I told him I hadn't been planning on dying, but was caught unaware when the snow started flying. As my body went numb and started to tire, I accepted that this was my time to expire, and looked forward to seeing my true love again in an afterlife filled with lost family and friends. And with that I said just how accustomed I'd grown to meeting my end in the snow all alone. He said dying alone is a terrible fate, and I didn't seem ready. Perhaps I should wait until I had shared my whole life with someone, and maybe then I could consider it done. So I asked him if he had had someone in his life, and he looked at me hauntingly, saying, "Not quite. But although not in life," he leaned in to confide, "I've wandered and found quite a few since I died." With that, I then knew what I had feared the most. This bum I was talking to must be a ghost. So I asked, and he told me that wasn't quite it. More like my own sorrow come to visit a bit. So my loneliness, regret, and survivor's remorse come to comfort me just when it couldn't get worse. He said that's what he was, and he was always there, even when the whole rest of the world didn't care. He said loneliness is our most trusted companion, when by all others we've been abandoned. In our darkest hours, on our coldest nights, it never gives up on us, never takes flight. A constant and comforting routine old sadness that keeps at bay hopelessness, fights out the madness. So he told me his nature, and with no small pride, then invited me while I still lived to confide about the young woman so many years gone, and about how I'd secretly never moved on. How to that day I'd still longed to see her again, and how I looked forward now to my own end. And the stranger just listened to all that I said. He smiled and agreed and nodded his head. He gave me one thing I wanted more than her. He lent me his ear. I'd let me be heard. Then I told him I think that it's really too bad that I'll die here before peace of mind can be had, that I'll never get over the loss of my love, that this pain is one thing I'll not rid myself of. Then he laughed and said, sadly, it's always that way, whether you live 100 years, one or a day. And he said, as if I wasn't already chilled, if that's your only goal, you'll die unfulfilled. So you never stop feeling a loss such as this. It'll always be with you. You'll never know bliss. But the more time that passes, the better you get at accepting what happened and living with it. And that, he said, really is the best you can do, to carry on living, to love anew. So if that was all that kept you alive, a recovery toward which you constantly strive, then maybe it's best you stop living this lie. Perhaps it's your time to let yourself die. But if knowing this, you still have more left to be with your life or your fate or your destiny, then consider allowing yourself to live longer. Don't let this kill you. Let it make you stronger. And in that moment I realized I want to exist, to carry on, thrive, and grow and persist, to let death come another day, way down the line. Until then, I'll make better use of my time. Unfortunately, I decided too late that letting myself die would be a mistake, for the cold and the ice and the unending wind had taken their toll and were doing me in. My eyelids grew heavy, my head then fell back. Just like falling asleep, the world faded to black. I did not die that night, just so you know. I woke up the next morning, soaked from the snow, in a hospital under a young doctor's care. I asked after the bum who had carried me there, and she told me that I'd wandered in all alone. There was nobody with me. I'd come on my own. Of my Savior no sign was to be had or seen, for all anyone knew he was only a dream. But if that's all he was still enough to keep me on keeping on when life got too tough. I should have been frozen, I should have been dead, but some unknown force kept me living instead. And if you think that's a lie or at least apocryphal, just go check the records down at the hospital. And if you're ever alone with your life fading from you and a generous stranger should happen upon you, be they figment or phantom, let them speak their piece, for their words might be just what your dying soul needs. Give them a chance to pick you off the ground, to help turn your decision around. When a random lone wanderer happens on you, or perhaps it's the wandering you yourself do, or maybe they're your sorrow, come to visit a spell, or maybe you're theirs. You never can tell. I read that once before. It was for a Halloween show last year, which is what I wrote it for. And it's one of those things that has a lot of personal stuff in it. It's an emotional piece for me. I drew on a lot of my own loss to write that one.